Stephen Fromkin is a VR 360 video producer. He has been at it for a bit longer than anybody else that I know. And I am so happy that he agreed to come down, or up, I guess he came up,
Right.
yes, came up, to do this for us. So Steve, I'm not going to waste any more time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian, and everyone for having me. It's been a really fun day, and I've had a great time listening to Neil, and Todd, and Anjali, and I'm going to add a little bit that I think we'll touch upon probably what each of them has said, and hopefully expand on it a little bit for each of you. I'm going to do so by starting with a little video. And hopefully the sound that comes out and pipes through will be powerful enough. So the background on this is we were asked to help Visa do some 360 video for an app for the Olympics last year. And this was the product that part of what this video is. It's obviously 16 by 9, but what it's going to show is within it is some of the behind the scenes, the results, and the experiences. But because it came out of an app, the final audio, it's a little tinny. So hopefully bear with that, but it's pretty interesting. They did a really great job.
Ever fly down a mountain at 90 miles per hour? Or dance on knives across ice? Or jump through the air the length of a football field? For Olympic athletes, that's everyday training. But for the rest of us, there's the Visa 360 Cam. It's the first mobile app that brings wearable technology, mobile capabilities, and interactive 360 video together to get fans close to the athletes the way only Visa can, and reinforce the brand positioning everywhere you want to be. It all started with the athletes. We rigged them up with as many cameras as we could, then we turned them loose to do what they do best. We took that footage and stitched together a panoramic 360-degree sphere that works with your device's gyroscope. By tilting and moving your mobile device, you can control the camera's perspective. Look up, look down, look behind, to the side. You'll see what the athlete sees and hear what goes through their mind as they train for the Winter Games. By toggling between 360 face and follow cams, users get new perspectives on Olympic training. Even the athletes were surprised. They were able to see things they had never seen before. And fans reacted in kind. In just 30 days, over 300,000 downloaded the app. It was a front-page feature on the iTunes Store. And then it went clear in over 100 countries, from Canada to Japan to Russia, and places like Google Creative Sandbox.
Okay, I'm going to stop it because short on time, their app was wonderful, it did great, all the metrics, hooray. But the point of that was those athletes had an experience because of VR, because of 360 video, that they didn't see coming. Okay, strap this rig to my head, great, I'll ski down the mountain. And the product was, I had no idea I was doing that with my foot. Because they were able to watch, turn around and say, oh, never knew that. And so the power of VR, as we all know, is somewhat still growing. We can imagine it, but we don't know exactly what it's going to be. But this was one of those scenarios where it happened, and it was one of those moments that really reinforces what we're all doing and why maybe a lot of us are interested in this. Real quick, here's what I'm going to go through. I'll give you a real quick background on me, on what I do, and give you a little bit of some of the tech about 360 video production, and then I'll tell you a little bit about sort of what my day-to-day is like and why maybe I have something of value to share with you, and you can decide on that. So my background is in physical production. I started traditional media producing, line producing. I got quickly into post-production pipelines and visual effects, and I've been doing that for, excuse me, I've been doing that for over 15 years. And then in about 3 years ago, I worked on a 360 video job. I had no idea what it was, and since then I did a number of them. And at the end of last year, I started working for a company called Verse, and did a few projects there. And then this year, in January, I began working with 360 Heroes, and now serve as their head of production. So what that means is I'm on the phone generally 4 to 5 times a day having a conversation that goes a little bit like, we want to do this production, and we want to do it with 360 as well. And that's where you put the cameras on the outside of the room and shoot in, right? And we say, no, not really. And then it starts with a technical conversation. So how many folks, just to sort of create a baseline, how many folks have shot 360? We've already, okay, there's a few, good. So 360 Heroes makes these. Our owner and founder invented this little rig right here. It was the first one that went to market about 3 years ago, and has since sold over 6,500 through just an online e-commerce type store, right? And since then has made multiple versions. This is a 6-camera rig, that's a 7-camera rig, and this is one live action solution, live action data capture solution for 360 video. We also do some other parts of the technical workflow, because as we started to shoot, we started to realize, well, what about media management? There's 6 times as many files for every take. There's 7 times. We have a 10-camera rig, 12-camera rig, and a 14-camera rig. And so obviously media management became a thing. And so we've been playing with this and experimenting and evolving as we've grown. But to make sure everybody understands a little bit about, I'm going to actually skip this video because we've already seen something very similar to this. And I'm going to skip that because you guys, I think you all get this. So I'm going to go straight to this. Because this is what 360 video is like. It's truly a visual effects workflow. It's the theta that we were looking at earlier. And some of the other rigs out there are fantastic. They do some unbelievable things on the fly. Where jump is going is outrageous. It's exciting, but ultimately they're all common in that they're a compromise. These two, these are a massive compromise because I can only get so much resolution. I can get a lot. I can get a little bit more than some of the things that are out, some of the rigs that are out there, but it's all a compromise. And the reason is we're shooting, and I think it was the picture of the skyline that we saw. We saw it was a 2D image, but it was clearly 3D. Well, now we're shooting with cameras that have separated nodal points, and so we're creating parallax issues. And everybody knows what parallax is? Yeah? Okay. So if you have an array like this or anything similar, you're going to have to deal with parallax. You're going to have to deal with the fact that when objects in motion, people, whatever it is, cross a scene at different layers, it's still a 2D image. It doesn't understand Z-depth. It's still a 2D image, and for that reason, it becomes somewhat of a visual effects workflow. So you can choose how you want to solve the compromise. There's that rig that was done over at Panavision, and there's a lot of those rigs. Those are a bunch of reds, and I can only imagine the fantastic resolution that would come out of that. But that's not going to mount to a hockey player's helmet. So just like when you go shoot, you decide what is it that's most important. Is it resolution? Am I going to shoot a baseball game or such a wide landscape that I need that resolution? I need to use the Red Dragon, or can I get away with something smaller? And do I need something smaller because I am mounting it to a head or a car or I'm walking around with it? And so these are the conversations that these are some of the conversations that I'm having every day. And they start with the technical challenges that generally surround the idea that, as I said with parallax, with most of these camera rigs, and these are, as you may or may not know, these are built for, designed for GoPros, right? Fantastic, tiny little device with great resolution and great frame rate. So, why is frame rate important? If I shoot at 30, I can get maximum resolution. Well, sure, you could shoot all of these at 2.7K or 4K, and on a 6 rig get a 24K file, but you're probably not going to be able to do much with that. I mean, you can save it for like 2016 or 2020 even, when we can actually screen those. But for now, what you want to do is have a higher frame rate. Why? Because with a rig like this, we're not talking about gen lock. We're not talking about rigs the cameras that are in sync with each other, with a Blackbird's generator or any other device, and therefore, they need to be sunk in post. They need to be sunk in your workflow. So that's, again, one of the challenges. You go, one of the compromises, you go and you use the red rig and tie it all together with locket boxes. Great, brilliant. So there's lots of different solutions. It just depends on what you're shooting. So let's talk about that. And this is really sort of where I want to spend most of the time, which is why I kind of blew through a lot of that stuff. I get into conversations on a daily basis that are either from agencies, creative agencies, or producers, or just folks who are really excited about VR. And they have a project that they want to talk about, and they want to figure out how to do it, and they want to know if they should do it themselves, they should hire us to help them with production services, or they can just kind of do a hybrid. What should they do? How should they get this done? So, based on the folks in the room, let me share some of these stories. And the first one I want to share, well, I'm going to leave it up to you. What's more important to you all? The scenario where, and this down here, where at the bottom narrative is sort of where I'm tempted to talk a little bit about, based on everything Neil started with, and some of the fantastic notes from Todd about editorial. So I'm going to go with narrative. We're cool with that? I'm going to start there, okay? So I get a call, and they say, we want to shoot a short film. And it's really just 2 scenes, and we want to shoot an interior, and there's really just going to be one guy and then another character, and then we want to shoot an exterior, and it's like a crime scene. Okay? Well, what's your point of view? Like, is it mounted to a person? I don't know, maybe. Should it be mounted to a person? That's what the content creator needs to kind of understand. So as a content creator, you're thinking, and they don't always know this right away, should I mount it and make it a point of view, or is it just a fly on the wall type of scenario? Sorry, I'm wandering. I'm supposed to stay near this for the video. Sorry. So, Brian, I told you can yell at me when I wander. I wander. So the question of camera position is actually valid. What makes sense for the shot? And is it always the same? In one scene, is it mounted to a person? And in another scene, is it not? Was it Neil who was showing us the video, the CGI video, where the police officer, it goes from we're tracking him, we're following him, and wham, now we are him. That's an interesting approach, but is that what the content creator wants? I don't know. I'm telling you about a call I literally had the other day, so we don't know yet. We don't know where this is going to end. The next question is, well, where are you going to put this media? Is it going to go to YouTube 360? Is it going to go to an app? Do you want it for Oculus or Gear, cardboard, everything? Because depending on what you're going to shoot or where you're going to distribute, you kind of want to think about that when you're shooting. It's like traditional 16 by 9. You know, what are my deliverables? So we're constantly talking about what those deliverables might be and how we can facilitate the best workflow for that delivery. The other thing that comes into play, and I jumped ahead on the whole sort of delivery format thing, but back to camera position. What about camera movement? If it's not mounted to a person and is it in a fixed point or is it moving? Well, a still camera is sort of maybe boring in a narrative. You want to sort of drift in on a dolly shot or a slider, you come in on a jib arm. Well, you're going to see all that. What about the lights? Narrative, you're lighting, so all of these questions about where do all the gear go, and where does we actually had one scenario where somebody said, well, if we shoot on a stage, do I have to get rid of like craft services and everything do I have to hide that stuff? No, you don't have to. You're going to see it. So what, can we just take out the cameras? Yeah. Well then what's behind there? Well, nothing. So but none of it's wrong. None of this is wrong. Take out the cameras, shoot 180, and comp something else in. Like the idea that you must go out and shoot with all the cameras and come back with a perfect sphere of live action footage is kind of a tall order. And as I said at the beginning, this is sort of a visual effects workflow. You are capturing pixels, and after that, you're manipulating them. Just by the very nature of you're putting them in a stitching program, and you're warping them and distorting them, and you're materially changing them, you might as well just swallow the bitter pill that you're in an effects world now. And trickery is part of the recipe. You have to deal with parallax. You have to deal with the fact that there's going to be multiple seams getting in the way, and you're going to have to hide that. And there's a monopod now you have to paint out, or a tripod, or a drone that I can see. I wanted to see the beautiful sky, and now there's a helicopter. So, again, conversations so let's talk about, speaking of narrative, let's talk about, where is Neil? Neil, are you still here? See, he gave me such great intro to really what I think is some of the most interesting stuff, which is that indeed the language of VR is not the same as the language of film. Screen direction, everybody knows what screen direction is. Somebody enters on the left, they exit on the right. If they exit on the right now, it looks like they're going back the other way. Right? That's just one example of screen direction. All of these things that we, as content creators, as directors, as camera operators, all of these things that we have taken as the foundation for storytelling, for blocking, for mise-en-scène, all of those things are completely turned upside down or inside out, or they're all around us, so to speak, right? Now so the questions don't end. And I'm not going to say that I have all the answers, but the discussions are fun. So let's continue with that for a second. The Neil's example with Heat, Pacino and De Niro in that awesome scene in the diner. Master shot, coverage, shot, reverse shot, right? I've actually seen somebody try to shoot coverage in VR, right? And so it's Jamie and Jolly, and they're, sorry, I'm walking away from the mic again. Sorry, right? So I shoot them, and I want coverage. But even in the master shot, if there's nothing back here, what's the point? Form meets function. right? So if I need that type of shot, if I need that type of storytelling, maybe I don't need 360. Maybe I can just tell this in standard 16 by 9, but I want 360. Okay, fine. So now let's build a shot where it makes sense for the camera position to be a part of that conversation. Instead of it being a shot on De Niro, shot on Jamie, shot on Pacino, shot on Anjali, instead of back and forth, what we normally know as editorial and composition, we're going to give the camera a seat at the table. We're going to put it at the table, and just as though you were a part of the conversation in Heat, for example, you're going to sit there and watch, so that it's up to you when there's a dramatic pause. Who are you looking at? But as a filmmaker, as a content creator, you have to decide, is that okay? Because what if somebody says, I wonder what's over here now? That's just part of the deal. So, speaking of, it's like you did that on purpose. That was perfect. Sound. Right? So I keep it quiet back there. Set, be quiet back there. But when I want somebody to look, when I want somebody to jump, I have that sound go off. And I draw people's attention. I use peripheral. Because right now, my composition, I'm looking at this gentleman right in the front. What's your name, sir?
Sean.
Hi, Sean. So Sean's sitting there right in the front, right? So if I'm focusing on him, I have sort of a, let's call it a composition I'm focusing on, right? Because I'm speaking to him, so I'm focusing right there. But if somebody moves over here, jumps up, starts mayhem, I have peripheral vision. Well, use peripheral vision. You can do that. You have a viewable area in VR, and then you have the area that you need to go and look at. So, what I'd like to do is to stay on this sort of narrative idea for a minute, and open the floor up to if there's any specific questions. If anybody has a question, you know, whether it's related to what I'm saying, what Neil said, what Todd said about narrative filmmaking or in VR, narrative content creation, because who here is a director or a producer or controls the camera, an editor, right? Thank you. Okay. So if you're going to get into 360, you are willfully giving up the two most precious tools: composition and editorial. They're evolving. And how do you embrace that as opposed to let it restrict you? What Todd was showing us with the jump, that's what they're testing. They're testing how to embrace the fact that there's multiple things I can look at. They're using a certain amount of points of interest to discern the likelihood, and then provide cuts from shot to shot. Right? That's exactly what we're talking about, is changing the way we think about editorial or composition. So any questions to specific, yeah?
So based on like the experiments with VR that have been done so far, are there like types of stories that are particularly well suited for being told this format?
Types of fictional stories?
Either way, like what seems to be working the best for storytelling?
What isn't working the best are fictional stories. Let's start there. What's the most challenging is narrative, which is why it's so fun to talk about. Because we have a certain language, right? I mean, I know I'm repeating myself, but because of that, that's what's most difficult. We're used to being taken on a journey, and it somewhat changes when we become in control of that journey, whereas we were just sort of passive as opposed to active in that process. What is working is things that are experiential, somewhere where you can give me the best seat in the house, right? If you can give me a seat at Super Bowl. See, I used Super Bowl as an example earlier today, so I didn't want to double up, but it is my favorite example. 50-yard line seats at the Super Bowl. I'm probably not going to get those, but I might get a chance to watch that in VR. An equally good example, soccer fans. Rabid soccer fans, anybody? There's no rabid soccer fans here, right? Okay. You know, pick a place where you know there's going to be a lot of energy. A concert. Soccer game, a soccer match is a lot of energy, right? Especially when it's not in this country. When it's elsewhere, it's more. Right. Those types of places are where you can experience not just the content, but the energy, because it becomes immersive. It becomes infectious. And it's sort of what we deal with as a viewer. We see reaction shots, we see comedy, we see tears, we react to those emotions, generally. So if we get if we feel connected, it becomes infectious in the same way that 16:9 would. That's why Chris Milk keeps calling VR the great empathy machine. To continue answering your question, what else is working are music videos, because, you know, there's not a lot of rules. Kind of do whatever you want. Yes, sir.
Great talk so far. My question is actually about what you said earlier regarding multi-shots don't work because you lose the background. If I understood that correctly, you're talking about the heat scene, and I'm not as familiar with that as I am with Pulp Fiction, but imagine you've got Honey Bunny and Ringo, rockers, in the diner, and then you've got Vincent Vega and Jules at the seat, at the table. Why couldn't you shoot from different views?
Well, now you're talking, right? So that's a great example. Thank you. Did everybody hear that? So, the scene, the talkie scene with De Niro and Pacino, that's just two guys at a table. Okay, not physically the most exciting, performance-wise, drama-wise, great. So you probably want to be in there tight. Because if you were directing that scene, if you were editing that scene, you're probably going to say, yeah, don't pop out to the wide shot. Stay in on that tight shot. I want to be in with those guys as much as possible, right? I want to be in with their eyes, their emotions, their reactions. But this gentleman, what's your name, sir? Chris. Thank you, sir. So what Chris's point was, take a scene from like Pulp Fiction. In the diner, you got Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta and it's Tim Roth, right? And what's her name? Amanda Plummer. Honey Bunny, right? And so it's a scene where there's conflict going on. There's two people holding. Everybody's seen Pulp Fiction. I'm not going to ruin this, right? Two people are holding up the diner, right? And it's not going well. Tension is high. There's a guy there with a gun. There's a girl there with a gun. There's a guy over here with a gun coming in from the bathroom. It's all around you. And therein lies where this is fun, because you could potentially, if it was blocked properly, and if it evolved properly, instead of having a shot where everything's taking place here and there's no reason to look here, you kind of open it up. Maybe not to 360, but maybe to at least give it such a wide view that you feel the tension, because you have to look around to see where the conflict is coming from. There's people yelling, there's people screaming, there's people with guns. So it's a good example. That I would rather be a part of that scene in VR, or I don't know that I would rather. I wouldn't mind seeing De Niro and Pacino up close. I mean, come on. But that is a great example of narrative storytelling that would benefit from just sort of some sort of trial, just somebody experimenting, and that's what. Yes, copy that, sir. So go ahead, sir. Yes.
Just a thought on that. Great question. But I feel like you need different point of views at the same time, doing all 360 VR, and it would have to be highly coordinated, which is a really tough thing.
Yeah.
or anything else. The coordination would be the biggest thing. But you go.
Yes, sir.
I've got kind of two questions that are knit into this equation. And if I may, I'm going to step up there so that it can be recorded.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Okay, one of them is the relationship between 3D, that is immersive audio. Yeah, this one. Essentially, we live in a period where Atmos is kicking in. We have object-oriented sound location. That means that it's going to look beyond the number of speakers that are in your space for an exhibition. And that means that you can have an absolute position of a particular element in sound that can drive the narrative, that can drive where you should be directing your attention. So we have the potential here that audio could lead the way for the narrative to be directed. Concurrently, we have light field technology, where there isn't a single focal point in any direction, but rather a series of focal points that you can drive as the viewer. Do we yet have a sense that we'll be able to not only track the eye's movement within what you're viewing this immersive space in, but also that depth of focus within that field?
Okay. So I'm going to take them as two separate. First, let's talk about audio. It's a great question because audio is a perfect example of how to help tell the story. And it doesn't matter if it's narrative or not. Our experience in life is to respond to sounds, respond to motion, right? So if we see something move, we look, that draws our attention. We hear something, that draws our attention. Using a either binaural audio rig or some other multi-channel type positional microphone based wherever the rig is, wherever your 360 camera rig is, and then post-producing it in a way that draws the viewer left, right, back, up is complex, but it's workable, it's doable. There are people who are using binaural audio, recording it, faking it, taking stems and then adding it to the binaural audio, and it basically matched up with the accelerometer, just like the video is, and they can look wherever. I'm not as in terms of light field technology. Let's just let's take light field technology and just put that aside for a second, and just say that as the tools, whether it be light field technology or just getting Z data captured and being able to adjust focus, or literally push in from the position even though the camera never moved. Some of those types of things are absolutely going to add. What basically we're talking about is how much more can we virtually, digitally, or otherwise fake the moves of the camera, and therefore build the story pretty much as we want. And that's all coming. It's just as the technology evolves. I got the red light, like they give the red light when the comedian's almost over. I have a lot of other, obviously, I have numerous anecdotes that I could share about production. I'm happy to share them. I wish there was time to share more with you or talk to each of you. I'll certainly hang out for a little bit and answer more questions. I do have, my last slide is something that was requested. If you're going to start production, if you're going to go out there and start doing this, and you want to do so, I highly suggest the 7 rig and some of the other items that are there. This is all actually on our website. You can buy a lot of this stuff there, but we're not the only game, and we're not the only solution. We're just a good one, and we've been doing this for a while, and we're very open source about it. There are a lot of production companies out there, and we're just happy that you're trying it and that you invited us to share some of our info and experience. So thank you again, Brian.